recommendations are as follows. I have 14 recommendations. Number one, Nigeria must establish an economic philosophy from which its economic vision will be derived, and set out a vision that will drive economic policy and management. Such a vision must make clear the respective roles of the state and the market, and its position on capitalism and its various adaptations. There are several types of capitalism: entrepreneurial capitalism, crony capitalism, welfare capitalism, and state capitalism. I don't know if the people who are managing our policy are going into this type of thing. But if you don't, I will tell you, you're not serious. You have to understand these things that I'm saying and what their implications are for day-to-day management of the economy. Number two, I recommend that economic management in Nigeria should be overhauled completely. The president of Nigeria should set up a council, full-time council of economic advisors, headed by a chairman that will serve as the chief economic advisor. That council should have about 5 to 6 people, and it will be 24/7 advising the president on actions to take to enhance economic growth. They are researching and advising the president full-time on the economy. The economy must become job number one. So now, ministers, we've had in this country what we call the economic team. I recommend that ministers should not be members of the economic team. Ministers, their duty is to execute the priorities of the president. So they shouldn't spend their time jostling to be members of some economic team. I was a member of the economic team in a certain era, and the ministers who were not members of the team felt as if they were second-class citizens. Now, the members of the council, this economic council I'm talking about, they should have expertise in the main areas of economic growth ambition, such as fiscal policy, in particular taxation. Taxation is the core of fiscal policy. So you must have in the council at least one person who is an expert on tax policy and tax reform, and an economist. So they should have a member who is versed in industrial policy, trade policy, energy economics, and economic history, philosophy, and political economy. That also matters. In fact, that is the foundation. Number three, I think that the federal government of Nigeria should set up a very clear economic diversification plan along the same lines of what we have seen in Saudi Arabia. This is a plan that is a real plan, with KPIs, with milestones, with accountabilities, to be achieved within a certain time frame, or there will be consequences for those who are responsible. That's how a real diversification plan is set up. What are the productivity targets? It's not just about GDP growth. Number five. Concerning number four, about this diversification plan, I think that we should make far-reaching structural and governance reforms to the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, the NNPC. I know that there are some proposals in the works, but as we've seen, politics is hampering these things. This is why I keep coming back to the fact that it is politics that is holding Nigeria's economy down, and that we cannot achieve economic growth under the current trajectory of our politics. So I think that the NNPC, we could look at a partial privatization of the NNPC, with shares listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. And in doing so, the reason it is necessary to partially privatize the NNPC is because discipline must be brought into its operations. If you do not do that, you will keep having things like the last scandal we have been treated to in the newspapers. And, contracts are being awarded, allegations of all sorts of things. But you need a discipline of private ownership that is only partial. I'm not saying that the state should give up totally the NNPC. And the interests of the local communities in the oil-producing regions must be protected in this process. For example, you can ensure a set-aside in private ownership of the NNPC by members of the communities of the oil-producing regions. The details can be worked out, but this is simply a conceptual thought. Now, the next recommendation is that to create millions of jobs in Nigeria within a 4 to 5 year period, Nigeria should establish a public-private partnership, private equity, and venture capital fund to support job creation through access to entrepreneurship capital. This fund should be established with not less than 500 billion naira, and it should have contributions from the federal government and private sector funders. And this fund should be run on a for-profit basis as a private company by private sector managers. Mutual accountabilities can be established between the government and the private sector partners and for the operating entity. This is very important. Number 6, to reduce unemployment in a strategic and systemic manner. This recommendation about the establishment of this venture capital fund should go hand in hand with a fundamental overhaul of Nigeria's educational system. And we must cut down that system's propensity to produce graduates who will join the long lines of the unemployed. So we should have a two-track system, educational system. At secondary school level, we should have a system whereby from graduation from secondary school, some people will go into vocational and technical skills, some people will go into universities. This is the way it has to be. We need to restructure the educational system such that entrepreneurial, technical, scientific skills are 70% of the courses offered in Nigerian universities. The remaining 30% is for lawyers like us, political scientists, and so many other social scientists, whatever. But because those subjects are also useful, every society needs a combination, but you must say to yourself, what is the need of the society at this particular era? There are lawyers in China, but they're not the people who dominate debate in China. There are lawyers in the United States. They're very powerful because the United States evolution has come to a point where that is the case. The Chinese have looked at their own situation and they've said what we need now are technical people. That's how we can catch up with the United States. And they are catching up and indeed trying to overtake. So we have to really do this in Nigeria. We must determine that we will become an innovation society. We must determine that we must become a society where you do not have these kinds of high levels of unemployment. And the only way to do it is to reform the educational system and empower it to produce the necessary skills that are employable and can, bring about improved productivity of labor. There's no other way. You combine the venture capital fund approach, you combine the educational system reform approach, and within some years, you will begin to see a systemic decline in unemployment. So that's the way to go. I've also recommended that Nigeria's tax authorities should follow the ownership trail of Nigeria's 140 million cell phones. If you have a phone and the SIM card is registered, there is no reason why you should escape your patriotic duty to pay tax. Therefore, the tax authorities should go this way and get the data of every Nigerian. They should ask you, you are a street hawker on the street. You have a cell phone, you have a SIM. Why are you not paying tax? So then you work out a tax deal. They shouldn't be chasing around Stella Ezokoli, asking her to be the tax ambassador, always looking at the corporate sector. What about the informal economy? Why can't we bring their money into the national economy? And then, of course, on the part of Nigerians, on the part of the government must enter and fulfill its own role in a social contract. If people feel that they cannot walk into a hospital and get treatment, if people feel that they pay taxes and the money is stolen, why would they want to pay tax? So this is the trust deficit that needs to be addressed. I've taken it from the other side, I'm also taking it from this side. So the two must come together. This requires a different type of political leadership. So, a couple of other recommendations very quickly. I call on the federal government of Nigeria to seize all new foreign borrowing. All foreign borrowing in Nigeria should stop. The reason is very simple. Anybody can say anything, but we can no longer count on the revenue from oil to be able to service our debt profile. The ratio of revenue that is going to servicing of debt is too high. And it is unsustainable. This is going to create problems for our children in the future. It's going to create problems for the leaders who will come up in the future, and we should stop this. Number 9, the federal government needs to establish a hedging mechanism to manage the risks of oil price volatility. There's a product called hedge. There are hedging, different types of hedging products that some countries use in Latin America and so on to manage the risks of their oil price exposures. We should look at this so that if with the hedging, you will not get all the full money of the oil price. But what you get from this risk management approach is that you will never fall to the bottom. And that's what you should be interested in. You must not get every $100 that comes in from the price of oil. If you get 80% of it, that's fine. And the rest goes to paying, servicing the hedging arrangement. Now, if you don't do that and oil falls to $30 a barrel, you're in hot soup. But if it falls and you're getting $40 or $50 a barrel based on your hedging arrangement, you're fine. So this is it. It's just simple risk management. I say that the federal government should institute smart protectionism. We should use tariffs to protect infant industries in Nigeria for a 7-year period. If you don't do this, manufacturing in this country will never rise. I'm sorry. I might sound protectionist and the liberal economists may not like it, but, Now, the Constitution of Nigeria should be amended to make the Development Bank of Nigeria a first-line charge to the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation. This is the only way the bank will have enough capital, enough assets to be able to fund enough money to fund big-ticket infrastructure projects. That's what the Development Bank of Nigeria should be focusing on. Other banks can focus on financing small businesses. The Development Bank itself should not be in the business of funding small businesses. But that's the way the mandate is structured at this time. But I recommend a change. Economic planning in Nigeria must now take a regional approach. We have to look at the 6 geopolitical zones and what are the economies of scale that can be achieved in each region. That's the basis on which we should be planning our economy. I recommend that power policy in Nigeria should henceforth focus and prioritize on industrial clusters such as Aba, Kano, Lagos, Nnewi, and Onitsha. Number 14, and my final recommendation, the Land Use Act should be abolished. This will help to improve access to capital in the economic system, because when people own land in freehold, they are able to access capital. More capital, they can provide collateral for loans. More capital will enter the system. It is because of the absence of these fundamental understandings. That's why we are practicing capitalism without capital. And there's no way you can get rich in terms of the wealth of nations. Some few people will get rich, but the average person will not get rich. Capitalism requires 3 things: capital, property rights, innovation. These are the 3 things that drive capitalism. Let me now conclude and say, as I said in the beginning, the problem is with political leadership. So, I have made several recommendations in this lecture, but the most important recommendation must be that we need a new generation of leadership that is visionary, intellectually and technocratically competent enough to meet the challenges of economic growth in a competitive global economy of the 21st century. This is the most important. So I close by saying, it is time to make our economy, creating jobs for the 30 million Nigerians that have none. It's time to make our economy job number 1. It is time to reclaim Nigeria's future from the limitations of our present. It is time to place the future of Nigeria in the hands of those with the knowledge and competence to create that future. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the path to the future that our children deserve. Thank you.